watching the screener, I learned so much that just isn't necessarily in our everyday life, any everyday conversation. And the acceptance rate is absolutely insane, below 8% basically. The last Ivy League school was like 8.6% acceptance rate. So I mean, the amount of private education that is getting public money is absolutely insane. So I'm really excited to talk about this because, we put these Ivy League schools on a pedestal, basically. These are the schools that's where our leaders come from. That's where all of these people who we're supposed to look up to and get our information come from. But at the same time, it's kind of like I put it in quotations as like a boys club or as like a socialized event to where these certain people will get into this certain organization and basically be set for the rest of their life. So let's dive into it. Talk a little bit about what the premise is. I know I touched on it a little bit, but I want to hear it from the filmmaker's mouth herself.
So in full disclosure, I went to an Ivy League school. I went to Columbia University in New York City. I loved the education I got. I did not like the institution. I spent most of my undergraduate years protesting in one way or another against the institution.
Right.
So for me, it's like having a school that has rigorous standards and that forms, let's call it an intellectual elite, I think is a good thing. And there might be people who disagree with me. I think a school that forms an economic elite is not a good thing. So I think if someone wants to be an astrophysicist or a historian or a philosopher and they have to go through a rigorous selection process and then have a rigorous education, I think that's something that we all benefit from.
Absolutely. Most definitely.
But when these schools are just kind of a way to get certified that you can work on Wall Street or in big tech, I think it's problematic because we're robbing students who maybe would really enjoy learning for learning's sake or becoming intellectuals, writing books, studying things that are obscure. We're robbing them of a place, and then they get so hard to get into because of the doors that they open afterwards. And because there's so few spots, because these schools have not expanded at all, even though they have more money, they're not opening new campuses, they're not opening up new slots, they're not opening up new schools. They're not using their money that they're sitting on.
Right.
So it's just all these people are missing out on a great education. And again, if these were truly private schools, we could still have a problem with it. But the fact that they receive so much public money and they don't pay taxes. So Harvard right now, last year, I'm sure it's more, they had $55 billion, with a B, $billion in their endowment.
Right.
What an endowment is, the way people can understand, it's a fund that you invest, and then you, the institution, take some of the interest or some of the profit, not all of it, to actually fund your operations. So you never touch the principal, you never touch the original donation. So this means if somebody like Harvard got donations 400 years ago when it opened, those donations are still growing, they've never been touched.
Right.
And Harvard always says, well, we need it in case something happens in an emergency, like COVID.
Right.
But so does every business.
Right.
Harvard has income streams, like you said, the students pay tuition, $80,000 a year. They have contracts. They have grad school programs. They have certificates. They have a publishing house. So it's not like they're not making money. So why are we subsidizing? It's basically a tax-free hedge fund, and it's all legal.
Yeah.
And also like with there's so much debate now about education and what students are learning in school. I haven't been in school for 20 years. I did not touch that really in the film because that's another film. I don't know what's true or what's not. So
right.
I'm just like, well, what are the facts? The money is the fact. And also how these schools that everyone say, oh, they're so woke, how they really treat the students from disadvantaged backgrounds who go there. And a lot of them talked about how isolated they felt.
Right.
How lonely they felt. How hard they had to work, even though they got a free scholarship.
Right.
to pay for other expenses, they would spend 20 hours a week working, which, is normal. But if you're at a school where nobody else does that because everyone else is very wealthy, you're at a disadvantage academically, but also making friends and networks, which is kind of the point of the school.
Right.
So, and there's one girl in the film, Hannah, who goes to Harvard. She's the granddaughter of a housekeeper. And at Harvard, she scrubs toilets. And it's part of a Harvard program to help students who need money. And they're very clear to say, well, there's some students who are rich who just like to scrub toilets. So, so you can choose not to do this program. No one's forced into it. I want to make that very clear.
Yeah.
But I was just like, this is so weird that a school that has that much money gives a scholarship to this, working class Latina girl from LA. So she doesn't have to scrub toilets the rest of her life, and then she scrubs toilets.
And then she still does
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
But I was just like, this is just weird, it's just kind of odd. And they have enough money, and you're like, they can't throw this girl a few $1,000 so she doesn't have to scrub toilets.
Right.
For
Exactly.
other students,
Yeah.
which is humiliating. And it seems a little tone deaf too. And and there's so what I want to do with this is I grew up in Long Island. Going to an Ivy League school is a big thing in Long Island. There's a lot of pressure to get into one, but it's not like that in all the country. So I want to let people know who maybe are not exposed to these schools, the outsized role that they play in getting in power in politics, and also in getting money from taxpayers.
Right.
Most definitely.
It's like they've ended up in this position, like you said, they've kind of inherited this prestige. Do they really deserve it?
Right.